There is something a man can wear that costs nothing. It cannot be bought in any store. It cannot be faked in a mirror. And the moment a woman is near a man who carries it, she feels it before she even understands it. It is not cologne. It is not clothes. It is not looks. It is something far older, far quieter, far more powerful. The Stoics called it the only real possession a man can ever own.
Marcus was 39 years old, and he was tired. Not the kind of tired that sleep fixes, the kind that settles into your chest when you have spent years trying to be what the world wanted, agreeable, available, always performing, always adjusting, always shrinking. He had decent looks, a stable job. He was kind, thoughtful. He remembered birthdays and held doors open and said the right things at the right moments. And still, women left. Not dramatically, not with anger. They simply drifted. Like they had arrived in his life, looked for something they couldn't quite name, and quietly decided it wasn't there. He didn't understand it. He tried harder. He dressed better. He read about attraction, about what women want, about the rules of conversation and eye contact and timing. He optimized everything on the outside. And still, the drift. One evening, he sat alone on his apartment balcony. The city moved below him, indifferent, loud, alive. He held a glass of water. He hadn't turned the lights on. He just sat. And for the first time in a long time, he did nothing. No phone, no plan, no performance, just silence. And in that silence, something strange happened. A thought surfaced, not a solution, not an answer, just a question. Who are you? When no one is watching. The Stoics believed that most men live their entire lives performing for an audience that doesn't exist. They dress their personality the way they dress their body for approval, for reaction, for validation from eyes they cannot control. Marcus Aurelius wrote to himself, not for history, not for fame. His private journal, what we now call Meditations, was never meant to be seen. It was a man talking honestly to himself, stripping everything away, finding out what remained. That is the first thing a man must wear. Honesty with himself, not the polished version, not the version he shows at dinner parties or on dates. The raw, unedited version, the one that knows his fears, his patterns, the moments he chose comfort over truth. A man who wears that honesty, even silently, carries a gravity that others feel without knowing why. Marcus began to notice something over the following weeks. He stopped performing, not because he gave up, but because he began to see how exhausting the performance had become. Every conversation had been a stage, every interaction a test he was trying to pass. He had been living outside himself, constantly checking how he was being received, adjusting, recalibrating. He stopped. He said what he actually thought. Quietly, calmly. He sat with silences instead of filling them. He stopped laughing at things that weren't funny. He stopped agreeing with things he didn't believe. He became, in a word, still. And something shifted. People began to lean toward him in conversations, not because he was louder, but because he was settled. There was no desperation beneath his words, no hunger for approval underneath his eye contact. A woman at a bookstore asked him what he was reading. He told her, honestly, without trying to make it impressive. They talked for 20 minutes. She laughed, not because he was charming, because he was real. She could feel it. Epictetus said something that most people read quickly and forget slowly. He said, "Men are disturbed not by the things that happen, but by their opinions about those things." Marcus had been disturbed for years, not by rejection, but by what he believed rejection meant. That he wasn't enough, that something was broken in him, that he had to fix the outside to solve an inside problem. But the Stoics understood something deeper. Attraction, real attraction, is not a response to what a man presents. It is a response to what a man is. And what a man is written in how he carries uncertainty, how he sits inside discomfort without collapsing, how he speaks without needing the room to agree, how he exists without requiring anyone to confirm that existence. That is the second thing a man must wear: equanimity, the calm that comes not from having everything figured out, but from needing nothing to be different than it is. Amor fati, love of fate, not resignation, not passivity, but a quiet, unshakable acceptance of what is, combined with full presence inside it. A man who wears equanimity does not chase, he does not perform, he does not collapse at inconvenience, he simply remains. And in a world full of men reacting, that stillness is extraordinary. Marcus met someone eventually, not because he had optimized himself, not because he had followed a system. He met her because he had stopped pretending to be unafraid, and had simply become a man who sat inside his fear without letting it move him. She noticed it on their first meeting, not his appearance, not his words. Something underneath, a settledness, like a man who has looked at his own shadow and decided he is no longer afraid of it. She couldn't explain it at the time, but she told him later, months into knowing him. You were the first man I met who seemed like he didn't need anything from me. And he smiled, because he understood. He hadn't become more attractive by adding anything. He had become more attractive by finally stopping the removal of himself. The most irresistible thing a man can wear has no weight. It takes no mirror to put on. It costs no money to carry. It is simply this, the quiet, unshakable knowledge of who you are, worn without apology, without performance, and without need for anyone's confirmation. The Stoics did not teach men how to attract the world. They taught men how to stop fleeing from themselves. And the strange, ancient truth is this: when a man finally stops running from his own silence, the world turns around to look at him.